stuff. And if you do have questions, Skip is going to help, and I believe Boone is going to help as well. So today we're going to talk about blueberries. Let's go ahead and go to the first slide. Obviously, there's my good introduction slide. For you guys that don't know me, my name is David Oates. I'm the County Extension Agent here in Jefferson County. I'm the Horticulture Agent. So again, all of these presentations have been put together by our local county agents here in the Gulf Coast region. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of horticulture agents on our staff to help with and go from there. And Boone is saying good morning. So good morning, Boone. Thank you for helping. So that'll be good. All right. So we're going to talk about this real quick. I'll give you a really quick introduction. This is kind of how we're going to cover things. We're going to talk about the history of blueberries really quick. We're going to cover varieties of the blueberries. We're going to talk about soil requirements, and then some soil additions, drainage for blueberries, planting, mulching, fertilization, pruning, irrigation, and then the last section is going to be talking about container and then some insect issues. So that's kind of the order that we're going to talk about it really quick. So let's go ahead and just jump in there really quick. And if I go too fast, somebody, obviously stop me and let me know. And we'll definitely can stop and ask questions. So Skip, if you do have questions, or Boone, let me know. And then we will definitely kind of go from there. And we'll have a stopping point that we can stop and ask questions. Boone, did you have a question real quick?
No, I did not. Somebody else has their microphone turned on.
Okay, sorry about that.
You might need to do another little follow-up. There's several people that have their mics and videos on. Okay. Yeah, folks, if you don't mind, go ahead and turn those video feeds off and mute your mics. It's going to help the quality of the presentation quite a bit.
All right. I think everybody looks like they're good. All right, looks good. Okay, so again, my name's David. I'm the county agent here in Jefferson County, which is Beaumont, Port Arthur area. So we are, in the Gulf Coast region. So if you do have questions, let us know. And my contact information will be at the end of this as well, if you do have questions, and we'll be happy to answer any questions. So real quick, blueberries. If you thought that blueberries had been in Texas for a long, long time, they really have not, only since the late 60s. So blueberries are a relative newcomer to the crops that we grow here in Texas. Actually, they started here in Southeast Texas, to be truly honest. So very local for me and myself and a couple of other agents here. They were looking at Georgia and Alabama as states that they could copy for a blueberry commercial production. So looking at that, the first crop was planted in the mid-1960s. So, in given time span as compared to other fruits such as citrus and maybe, peaches and apples, blueberries are a relative newcomer, only about 60 years or 40, 50, 60 years old. So pretty young production. If you guys are familiar with the state of Texas, East Texas especially, commercial trials were started in the late 70s into late 80s. SFA there in Nacogdoches was a big cooperator. And there again at the bottom, you'll see some of the blueberry pictures from the early pictures. I just threw in a couple of pictures to show you how things have changed in production wise. If we had a production, commercial production on blueberry bush that size, it would be very hard to manage and it would be very hard to do. Next slide you're looking at is some of the variety trials. And I love the slides because it shows how we change our styles and our clothing and what we wear and things like that. So I thought that was pretty neat to put that in there. But you guys have all heard what comes around goes around. So I guess the plaid is coming back in. But this shows an early planting on your left-hand side. Notice the very lack of maintenance on it. It's just planted, and really that's it. And the one on the right is actually a commercial planting there in Mill Creek here in that was in Nacogdoches. That has since shut down there in East Texas. But we were able to work on that while I was going to SFA as an undergrad. So there were a lot of things that was pretty neat there to witness. A lot of commercial operations there in Nacogdoches in southeast, in the East Texas area. So that just gives you an idea kind of where we've talked about, going from basically, plant introduction to a new introduction of plants, things like that. So let's jump over really quick to talking about varieties of blueberries. When you go to the store, you're going to only see a couple of varieties in this area, but blueberries do grow elsewhere other than just East Texas and the South. They actually grow quite a bit in other parts of the United States and Canada. So we have 4 different varieties that we talk about. Number 1 is what we call the high bush blueberry. Number 2 is the low bush. Number 3 is our rabbit eye. And then number 4 is a relatively newcomer. It's called the southern high bush, which is a hybrid. So those are the 4 that you normally will see in production across the United States. For our purpose, we're really going to talk about just mainly the rabbit eye because that's the one that primarily our homeowners here grow. And it's best suited for our region here in East Texas and Southeast Texas and along the southern part of the United States. If you do run across a blueberry or a high bush blueberry, you're going to see those when you go to mid-Atlantic to mid-South, and that's going to be the interior states of the United States. Kind of interesting to look at the different pictures. I've got some pictures here in just a sec, but very different in what we think of a blueberry. And I'm going to show you a comparison of a high bush versus a low bush. And if you looked at it, you would have to wonder, is that a blueberry or is that not a blueberry? So it's very hard to, very distinct characteristics changing on the blueberries. And then, of course, the last 2 will be our rabbit eye and then our southern high bush. And that's predominantly what we see here in the southern part of the United States. So here's a contrast in the high bush and the low bush. Obviously, the high bush on your left is more of a tree or wild form. And then on the right, you'll look how low growing that blueberry bush is. It's hard for me to imagine that the one on the right is considered a blueberry bush, but it is. So there's quite a bit of contrast and difference in the high bush and then the low bush type of blueberries. And then, but on the next slide here, you'll see that it's a what we typically consider our production type blueberries. On the left is our rabbit eye that we normally see here in East Texas and Southeast Texas. And then on the right is a northern variety of high bush blueberry where we do get a lot of our commercial production from. So they are different in size and shape and stature. So just be aware that all blueberry bushes are not the same. But it's just interesting to show you that as comparison to look at. Anybody have any questions so far? I know I'm moving pretty fast. I've got a video that I want to be sure I have time for. Okay. All right. So let's talk about varieties that we normally grow in Texas. For our purposes and homeowners and small production, mainly we're going to focus on rabbit eye blueberries because they are the best ones suited for our area here in Southeast Texas. So I've given you guys a list on this slide that what we're looking at of the standard varieties that we see. A lot of these are some older varieties, and these are the ones that I normally will see at the big box stores, and a lot of my nurseries will also sell this. So if you go to nurseries or the big box stores, you're probably going to see some of these varieties, and a lot of these, like I said, are a little bit older, but they're still really good varieties. So the ones on the left are some of my older varieties. The Tiff Blue, the Brightwell, the Powder Blue. Those are probably some of my go-to standard varieties that we normally see here in our area for homeowner production. Although we're getting some new varieties. One is Titan, and then one is Lemonade. The neat thing about the one titled Lemonade is that it's more of a pink color. You guys have probably seen some of these new blueberries coming out. They're called Pink Lemonade, and they're just titled Lemonade. That's the variety. They are not this purple or blue that we normally associate with blueberries, but they have a very pink color to them. So that's a new one on me. I have not played with that one or not grown that one yet. So I'm excited to know that we're having some new varieties coming out. And so that should be interesting to see. But these are probably some of the most commonly grown varieties in Texas. And all these are considered what we consider rabbit eye type blueberries. And that's what most homeowners should be looking for in their production. Okay, really quick, this is all the technical stuff here, and then we'll get into some more interesting stuff here in just a minute or two. But talk about variety selection. So varieties, basically, there's about 2 or 3 different varieties that we really like to grow, and they're considered, whether they're, varieties differ as to when they ripen. So we have what we call an early, a mid-season, or a mid to a late season. So they can ripen, not all at the same time, which is great. So if you're looking to extend your blueberry growing production period for a homeowner, you can obviously get 3 to 4 different types of blueberry bushes all growing at different times. And so you're not going to have, all your blueberries ripening within a 2 to 3 week window. So you can space it out with different varieties over, say, a month to 5 to 6 weeks. So that's really important for the homeowner that doesn't want them all developing at the same time. Get you 3 or 4 different varieties, and basically you'll have a longer span. All right, really quick, any questions so far on the varieties? If anybody have any questions on the varieties that we listed earlier?
I'm requesting questions. Haven't got any yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
Good.
All right. I'm having to look at my other screen here, so it just throws me off just a second. All right. On our variety selection, like we said, variety usually occurs over a 2 to 3 week period. So you've got probably half of a month to be able to pick that, which I think is good. They're all not going to ripen exactly at the same time. So that's very important for, I think, the homeowner especially. A little bit different aspect if you're a commercial grower. If you are a commercial grower, you definitely want to have a set point and set stop time to production. Otherwise, you'll be out there in the field forever picking blueberries. So it says blueberries can continue to ripen for 60 to 80 days after bloom. And that's a good, 2-month window almost that you can have for quality. But if you'll notice, it says the quality may decrease. Blueberries need to be picked on a regular basis when they're ripe. Usually we pick them every 5 to 7 days. So you about once a week or every 5 to 7 days, you can pick blueberries and they're still good. If we leave them on the vine, they tend to go down in quality a little bit. So, talk about that. Let's see. It says early maturing varieties may be at risk for frost injuries. That is one thing that we definitely have to be careful with here in East Texas and Southeast Texas, is if we have an early variety, and an early variety might be what Brightwell, or I think Brightwell's a pretty early one, and then maybe Woodard is another early variety. If those guys are ripening too early, and ripening usually can occur a lot of times in late March. I've seen them as early as late March, depending on our winter. You can run into some frost issues. Again, that's just part of the game that we play with blueberries here, if they're especially really early. If there is a frost, then we do need to take frost to protection. Best thing a homeowner can do if he has a lot of blueberries or maybe a row or two is to run a sprinkler and coat those guys with a little bit of ice. That helps to insulate them. Your commercial guys will definitely run the overhead sprinklers if we are going to have a heavy frost. So just something that we deal with from time to time. And weather permitting, we do run into frost issues that may bother our crops from year to year. So that is something that we deal with from time to time on these frosts on these guys. Okay, so let's talk about growing requirements, and I put on here soils. So the main thing about blueberries, and it's vitally important, it's you've got to have it, is looking at your soils. Your soils need to be a very acidic type of soil. Here in East Texas, and I consider this, Beaumont still part of East Texas, but it's kind of southern East Texas. But if you get up into the piney woods, your pH is going to be somewhere in the 6.0 to 6.2 to 6.4 as a general rule. If you're trying to grow blueberries, you need to be looking at a pH of about 4.2 to 5.5. And I guarantee you there's not a lot of soils that are that acidic naturally, so we have to help them along. When we talk about acidic soils, you guys, and I'm going to show you a map in just a second, but the further west you go, the less acidic your soils are. So if you're listening to us and you're maybe in Austin or Dallas, oh, that's going to be interesting. But you can still grow them, but they may have to be in pots or something like that. When we talk about our soils, we are looking for a well-drained, sandy loam soil. That is something vitally important. We can grow them in a semi-clay soil, but you're going to take a lot of sand, but you're not going to get the growth. So just be understanding that if you're, say, on the other side of Houston where you have a lot more clay, or maybe, like I said, out the other side of I-45, you may not have the best luck with blueberries if you're trying to grow them in the ground. You definitely will have to amend your soil. If you are a homeowner, deep East Texas is probably going to be your best bet for blueberries. So if you were to draw an imaginary line from, say, 45 east, that's where I would really look at growing my blueberry production. The further west you go, the less blueberry production you get. Guys out there in Central Texas and West Texas, I'm sorry, but blueberries may not be your ideal plant that you want to plant in the ground. So, okay, so here is a slide, and this is a really good map, and it shows all the soils of Texas. So if you guys will look at the little green section, and that is predominantly what we call East Texas or Piney Woods area. That's where you're going to see the majority of your blueberry production in the state of Texas for commercial production and mainly homeowners as well. Like I said, the further west you go, the less the soils are very conducive, and you're going to have to probably talk about growing them in containers or bring in a lot of soil, which can get very expensive. So says we do have a question. All right.
Yes, David, I think before we move too far away from it, this may be a good spot to hit it before we get away.
You bet.
Talk about the need for pollinizers and multiple varieties in the orchard.
Okay. All right. So good question. So as a rule, blueberries are self-pollinizing. So they are self-fertile. But if you do have cross-pollination between two different types of blueberries, that is good. Like I said, most of them are self-pollinizing. They are, can self-pollinize, but you will have better results if you cross them with some other ones. Certain varieties do cross better with other. I was looking at my notes here. For example, I know that Brightwell crosses good with a Woodard. So you do try to get two varieties that are in the same category. If you're having two early season blueberries, let's say a Brightwell and then a Woodard, those two would be good cross pollinators. If you're looking for a late season pollinator, something maybe like a powder blue, I think will pollinate to a Titan. So you try to get blueberries that are in the same growing season. If they're early performers, then you want two early performing varieties to pollinate. But yes, the pollination is very vital in that as well. We need to look at possibly if you are a homeowner and you do have some, bees, that is great. Bees are a wonderful pollinator for like that. One thing that we didn't mention earlier, and I'll go ahead and throw this in there, is the spacing on the blueberries. You do want to plant your blueberries close together because the pollination, you want the good pollination. So if your blueberries are 20 foot apart, you're not going to get a lot of pollination. You're going to get reduced amounts of pollination. So when you do plant them a little bit closer together, and I think that will help on your pollination issues as well. Did that answer that question, Boone?
Perfectly. Great job.
Okay. All right. So this map that I threw up, I think, is a good representation. Like I said, if you look at the green area, if you're in the green area or very close to that green area, you can probably grow blueberries without too much fuss. But the lighter shades, when you start getting into the blues and then maybe the post oak belt and things like that towards central Texas, and especially along the very edge of the coast. Probably not so much on blueberries unless you do them in containers. But if you're planting them in your yard, deep East Texas is really probably the best area for planting blueberries. So we're very fortunate here in our part of the state to have that, and I think that's vitally important. Okay. So real quick, we've talked about soils and where you can plant them and where you can't. So soil fertility and pH. And this is very important. If you're going to plant your blueberries and you're not sure on your soil, then definitely a soil test would be needed. And that's about, we can do that here at the extension office. All our agents are able to help you guys do that. But one thing that you'll need to do if you do decide to grow blueberries, if you do a soil test, make sure your calcium levels are below about 2,500 pounds per acre. Then you can adjust your pH as needed with some sulfur, and that's basically through your fertilization. And also you can add amendments like your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium into your soil if you do need to amend your soil. But really, if you're going to plant them in your yard, you need good, well-drained, sandy loam soil. And if you're not sure, then do a soil test, and that way you'll have, very refutable information on if you can grow them in your area or not. So when in doubt, a soil test is a good, cheap insurance policy, and it'll help you decide whether or not you can be able to grow blueberries in your area. Okay, so when we talk about soil additions, and this is organic materials, blueberries do require a lot of organic material to be productive. And the main products that we use here in our area are, number one, a peat moss, a black pine bark mulch, a pine straw, and then a leaf mold compost. So peat moss, you guys have all seen that. You can get that in bales at your hardware store, your feed store, or wherever you pick up your gardening materials. That really does a great number to help the soil, and it also affects the pH as well on your soil. One that everybody may not have access to, but we do here in East Texas, is black pine bark mulch. Now, most of us will put this in our flower beds. Either it's a hardwood mulch or a black pine bark mulch. Being that we're here in East Texas, we have access to black pine bark mulch. Now, key thing here is to stay away from the dyed mulches. A lot of the mulch that you get in bags or maybe even in bulk sometimes may be dyed. We advise not to put that into any kind of flower beds where it's been dyed or painted. Honestly, I don't know what they paint it with, and I know it's probably not the best thing in the world to paint with. So if you do get black pine bark mulch, stay away from the painted or the dyed mulch. Use the all natural, and you'll have much better results. We can also use pine straw. We don't use a lot of pine straw here in East Texas, but if you do start to have a lot of pine trees, they make a great cover, and not just for blueberries, but for other acidic loving plants as well. So if you have azaleas, we've always mulched with pine straw, and that's a great soil material or organic material to add with. And then the last one is leaf mold compost. We're really cranking up, trying to work with a lot of folks to talk about leaf mold compost as a soil addition. Lots of nutrient in that type of material. If you have lots of trees in a compost pile, then you can make your own, and it's a really good material. So on all these types of materials that we talk about adding to the soil, which include peat moss, pine bark, pine straw, and leaf mold, if we're doing a new planting, we always tell you guys to top dress a heavy layer 3 to 4 inches on top dress and soil, and then incorporate that down to about 6 or 8 inches of soil depth. For most part, your blueberries are going to be somewhat shallow rooted, so there's no sense to go down 2 foot trying to incorporate native soil with material. Basically 6 to 8 inches is all you need to do. If you'll, like I said, top dress it and then work it in, you can work it in with a spade or a shovel, or if you can actually rototill it in if you want to. But for most part, a good top dressing is really vital, and it will help add nutrients back into the soil. So if you're adding any of these materials on the left, which are peat moss, pine bark, straw, or that compost, leaf mold compost, anything you add will help improve that soil. All right, so we're kind of changing gears, and now we're going to talk about drainage. If your area does not drain or holds water, then you have to elevate no matter what. Blueberries do not tolerate wet feet or roots. These pictures that I showed are of a commercial production here in my county, or actually next door county. So this is one of our commercial productions, and this is actually called Creekwood Farms. He's a major supplier of blueberries in our part of the state, and we'll talk about him in just a few minutes. But I went out there and did a lot of shots with him as well. I want you guys really to focus on these two pictures that you're looking at. And look how much he has built that bed up with the mulch. It doesn't look like it's very high, but those are probably 18 to 24 inches raised minimum. So he does basically plant on a berm, so to speak. But then again, look at how much mulch he puts on those guys. So it is a lot of mulch, and it is a lot of drainage. We do ensure proper drainage for our blueberries. If you have a low spot in your yard, then definitely you need to make sure that you don't plant in that low spot if you're going to plant in the ground. That's why we always recommend, if you do have a low spot, to build it up in a raised bed of some sort or a berm. And this is obviously a commercial production. But it's interesting to note that these two pictures during Harvey and Imelda, this did flood. This is kind of, like I said, in a low-lying area all around him, but it drains well. If you look at the soil, it's real sandy, but it did drain. But I know during Harvey and Imelda in the last couple of years, he had about 2 feet of water. So they've had to go back in the last year and a half and remulch a lot of their product out here and a lot of their bushes. So this is a lot of fresh mulch that they've had to do in the last 2 years. So that's something vitally important to look at as well. All right. So when we talk about planting, key things that we need to look at when we talk about planting. Number one, if you are going to plant blueberry bushes, there's 2 key times that are really prone to planting. You can plant in the late fall or do an early spring planting for best establishment. And that's with a lot of our plants in this area. We don't recommend planting during the summertime just because of our heat. The heat really does a number on any kind of plant that you plant. So if you're planting in late fall or early spring, you're going to have a better chance for establishment and roots in that aspect. Now, I put this in here simply because we talked about it a little bit for commercial growers, but for homeowners, not vitally important. But if you can, and you do have multiple rows, it says to run your rows north and south if planting multiple plants, if your space permits. If you've got an area in your yard and you can kind of orient it, and you've got, let's say, half a dozen plants, put them where they're running north and south so that they do work with the prevailing winds. That's important. A lot of times we get wind burn if it's open space. So just remember, if you can, plant them in a directional north and south direction. When you are planting, obviously we want to plant on a berm or a raised bed if possible. And you want to hand dig those holes about 18 inches deep and about 24 inches in depth. One thing that I have learned is not to use an auger or anything like that. Those holes that you dig are very slick-sided with an auger, and this goes for just a lot of our plants. They don't like it, and roots will not spread into that very tight soil. So hand dig that hole very quickly and go from there, and that will help. It says do not put your fertilizer in the hole as planting as it will burn. Obviously, that's very true. If you've got a bare root plant, if you do put a little bit of fertilizer in the bottom, I don't advise on doing it, but because we're going to go back and fertilize with we're going to fertilize around the edges, top dress it. So I normally do not put any type of fertilizer when I am planting, just because simply I don't want to be able to burn the roots if it does, run to that. And then the other thing is, be sure you purchase good quality plants that are potted or bare root, either or. And be sure that you get some from a reputable grower or nursery. A lot of times, and this is not against any of our box stores or big establishments, they get stuff in. They're not sure if it grows in this area or not. So I always encourage my customers and clients to look for 2-year-old reputable plants that are bare rooted or basically a well potted plant in a container. So this is what you're looking for in a 2-year-old plant. And again, this is a commercial nursery. And this is, you'll see the quality there. On the right, you see that he does a lot of them and does in volume. But on the left, you'll look at that root and that plant, and it's well established. It's got a lot of top growth, and it is established. So that is vitally important to have it for your container grown plant. All right. At this point, we're going to take a stop, take a quick break real quick. Boone, do we have any questions so far?
I've been keeping up with them pretty good.
Okay.
Questions on soil types,
Okay.
pH, and what I'm responding to now is water quality
Okay.
concerning blueberries.
Okay, we'll talk about the water quality in just a few minutes. Like I said, pH is vital on that. You know, you need to be in the mid 4.5 to 5 region on your pH. Most of us are not. Most of us are going to be in the 6s to high 6s. So anything you can do to adjust that pH with the addition of some of those soil amendments, pine straw, pine bark, peat moss, will help to lower that a little bit. It's not going to move the needle a lot, but it will move it some. So the continual addition of those will help as well. All right. So I've got a little video and I want to see if I can do it really quick. So I'm going to have to change screens. I was not able to put it in my video and make it play like this. So we're going to have to swap screens. So bear with me 1 second and we're going to basically swap screens and do a little quick video. All right. So,
Go ahead and mute you.
Stop that. Okay. All right. So go to. Okay, bear with me on the technical difficulties. This is not as easy as I thought it would be. So you guys should be able to see a quick little video. And this is talking about planting. And this is a video that I shot with a commercial grower. And he's going to talk about planting. So you should be able to see the video real quick.
David?
Yes, sir.
This is Boone. You might want to back out of that before you share screen. There's a little button you have to click there for your audio to play.
Okay, hold on 1 second.
Yeah, go back to the Zoom.
All right, 1 second here.
We're gonna have to unshare and reshare. We forgot to hit audio.
I forgot to do my audio button. 1 second.
That's correct.
unshare. Let's see. Sorry.
Close it.
While they're getting that set up, we've got a user who's got their video feed on. I think they're viewing from their call. It's just unknown user. If you will click on your phone and disable the video feed, that would help save the bandwidth from for our presenter while he shares this video. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I clicked the audio, and then let's see. Screen one. Okay. Is that better? Here.
David, I'm still not getting the audio on my end.
Okay.
Can you hear any audio?
No, I wish I could because Mike is so animated. Try it again, David. Go back out and unshare. Maybe this is an opportunity if Skip still has screen control, maybe to go ahead and get off of that as well.
Yeah, I backed out during a question and answer a while ago. I backed out of that.
Oh, cool.
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Y'all should know that I'm not a computer expert. It only takes 2 ag agents to figure it out on my side. So give us a minute here and we'll get it going really quickly.
Yeah, when you go to share, before you pick what you're sharing, there's a little tiny box to the left.
Okay. So screen one.
Okay, can you see the video?
We see his screen.
Okay. See the video now?
Now we see the video. Now we can hear the audio. You may have to turn it up a bit, but I can hear the audio.
All right, Mike, we're going to talk real quick for our homeowner about actually planting a blueberry. Let's say you've gone to the nursery or your local supplier and you've gotten a good quality blueberry bush. And I will suggest that you seek out local suppliers for your produce, especially your plants, because they always seem to do better. No harm against the big box stores, but you know, when you're talking to the grower here, he knows what's going on, and hopefully he will steer you in the right direction. Sometimes that's not possible with the big box stores, but I always encourage most of my folks to visit their local nurseries and their mom and pop operations, because those are the guys that are in it every day, and they can tell you exactly what you need to do, right or wrong. But Mike's going to talk real quick about planting a blueberry and taking the root ball apart and you know, spreading it out and making sure that you get a good start. Because if you plant one incorrectly from the start, you're definitely going to have some issues from the beginning, and we want to try to avoid that. And you know, it's important to do that from this point forward.
And the main thing is the health of the local grown is a lot of times better, but also the varieties. A lot of times when they you get a box store, they'll ship them in from the north. You'll have a high bush that won't grow here, won't produce any berries unless you have 1,000 hours of chill hours, and we don't get that.
And we're not even close to that, are we?
So we're not close to it.
No.
Basically, you take your rooted pot like so, and take it. Now these aren't root bound, and so a lot of times they'll have a lot more root. But is what you'll do there is it'll usually come out as a full container, and you'll take it. You'll knock a good bit of this off, sides and everything. If it's a little more root bound, you can take a stick and just beat that bottom, beat it and split it to where it's actually about 3 inches in depth. Your root ball, your roots rarely go below 6 or 8 inches below the surface.
David, we lost audio. David, you're muted.
Okay, did the video quit working on us?
The audio cut out.
Did we lose our audio?
We lost our audio.
The video got real jumpy, and I think we got a bandwidth thing going. I don't know if anyone's also running their video feed, or
Just close it. Okay.
it may your computer just needs to catch up on the buffer.
Probably. Probably my internet here at the office. We'll go ahead and just shut this video down, but you guys kind of get an idea of, that was one of my commercial growers there, Mike on the left. And, talking about planting, basically showed you what a 1-year-old plant, a 2-year-old plant looks like. So basically you be sure that you do plant on a berm, plant high. And like I said, all those roots are in the top layer of the soil. So we'll go back to our slide. That seems to work a little bit better. So let me go back and change my screens again, and bear with me 1 second. I'll go back to our PowerPoint and we'll go from there.
Is this the slide you were on?
I think so. All right. So we're
Hold on.
Oh.
They can't see it. We got to share it. Sorry. Share
desktop.
desktop.
Is that what we're in? Yep. There we go. Okay, so you guys, we're back on our PowerPoint. Can everybody see the PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. Y'all will realize that it's not my forte here on working with technology, but we're getting better. So we saw a little quick video or part of it before it kind of messed up on us. But so let's talk about mulching. Mulching is one of those things that a lot of us do in our yard and our landscape, but blueberries are one that really is almost required to be very productive. Obviously, we know that mulching does a couple of things. It moderates our soil temperature, controls moisture, and controls weeds. Again, I like to use the straw, the pine bark, or the leaves for a mulch. For a homeowner, if you don't have access to the pine bark or maybe the pine straw, you can use shredded leaves as well, and that does a good job as a mulch. When we do apply mulch, we like to do it at about a depth of 4 to 6 inches yearly. And I know that sounds like a lot, and in some cases that probably is, but that will decompose over time and add nutritional benefits back into the soil. Like Mike said, if you caught it, it says that your roots do grow close to the soil surface and will be exposed if not mulched often enough. So we do want to keep them mulched, and that is important so that they do not basically grow close to the surface. So do mulch on a yearly basis, and that will be beneficial for your plant there as well. Here's a video basically showing how much he mulches. And again, looking at the plants, those are some that he has cut back for pruning purposes. We'll talk about that real quickly. But if you look at his bark, he uses a very coarse bark. For a homeowner, you don't have to use one quite as coarse. You can use that black pine bark, and it does great. But he uses it commercially, so he does a lot of mulching strictly with the pine bark in his commercial operation. Okay, so let's talk about fertilization really quick. Make sure we're good on time here. So fertilization, that's very important. A lot of us like to do fertilization once a year and call it good. Blueberries will do best if you do multiple smaller fertilizations over several applications. So 2 or 3 small applications versus a single large application. We prefer the several smaller applications. So when to fertilize for your blueberries, be sure that you side dress them. And what we mean by side dress them is basically you're going to fertilize the top and around the outer edges of that plant on top of the soil and water it in. You can use a granular fertilizer like a 2100. And and that's not much at a rate of about 1.1 to 0.2 pounds per plant, so twice a yearly. And that's pretty much going to be about a handful if you measure it out, give or take. So if you, just a small handful is about all you need twice a year for some of your fertilizations. If you're kind of like me and you might forget it, you can also do a Osmocote, which is a slow release. The video that we missed a part of it talks about that a little bit, but normally a good Osmocote in the range of a 15, 9, 12 or somewhere along there is very beneficial to Osmocote. That formulation that gives you your nitrogen and your phosphorus and your potassium. So you can do it that direction. You can use the 2100. Just be sure you do it after they bloom, or at bloom, I'm sorry, with the ammonium sulfate. And then you can also incorporate some of the slow release as well during the growing season. And then I put on here, be sure to ensure even distribution of fertilizer for your better results. So basically just don't throw it down in a clump and let it all be within 3 or 4 inches. Basically broadcast it. Basically you just want to broadcast it out like you're doing on your lawn so that you get a better distribution around the base of your plant. All right, any questions on fertilization real quickly?
I don't see any questions on fertilization, but real quick, can you try to adjust your PowerPoint view? We're seeing the presenter's slide set instead of the full screen.
My fault. All right, let's see if I can go back and do that.
You should be able to click display settings
Where do they want them? Okay,
at the top.
This one?
Top.
One second.
Yeah.
Is that better?
Yes, that's much better.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank y'all. So y'all can definitely see that I'm not technology savvy here. So, but please bear with us. We're gonna make it through this. All right, talking about pruning. For you guys that like to prune just in a square shape or keep it in a hedge form, you got to do a little bit differently. No flat top haircuts for blueberries. They have to be pruned yearly. And what we normally suggest is to prune them from the base up. So you're going to go in and remove the older canes from the base or pretty close to the ground level. And that's going to encourage new growth in that plant. We try to look for canes that are no older than 7 to 8 years old because that's pretty much on the top end for a blueberry production bush. If you have a lot of old growth, you're going to have less growth on there. So basically you want to keep most of those bigger canes at about 7 to 8 years old and then start pruning them out so that you can remove some of the dead and diseased wood. So no flat top pruning for those guys. It's really easy just to go in there and take your pair of pruners and go through there real quick and just basically kind of thin them out. So here's a comparison shot, and I put this in here. I think we already looked at it, but he goes in there every so often and he will prune back his blueberries very hard for commercial production. You said they're looking at it. So this is some in the foreground that have been pruned pretty hard and versus some to where I think he stopped mid-row. So that's how much he'll prune them in a year if he needs to go back and do a hard prune. He does a lot of pruning on his blueberries, a lot of hand pruning to keep them, productive. And that's vitally important for a blueberry bush. If you don't, they will get very leggy, very woody, and your production will go down. So you do have to prune your blueberries on a pretty regular basis to keep them productive and keep them in shape. All right. And I threw this little chart in here. It's a really good chart, kind of shows you how to prune. Basically, a 1-year-old plant versus a 3-year-old plant. So you're going to go in there and just do some selective pruning. You're really after a little bit of air circulation. And with most of our plants that we do work with, if you were to look straight down on it, you do want to be able to see a little bit of air circulation. So just that's a good chart for reference and look at that. You're not wanting to take everything out, but you're wanting to take some of the major canes out periodically to allow for better air circulation and airflow. And this is a picture of one that he showed me that basically you're going to look for about 3 5 or 7 major stalks at the base. And that's a good number to have, is an odd number. He said 3, 5, or 7 to have there at the base, and he has pruned out some of those as well. So if you can do that during your pruning sessions, you'll have a lot better airflow and a lot better quality fruit on new wood as well. All right, irrigation really quickly. Blueberries are very, very sensitive to certain types of water. So water is vitally important, as with all plants, but on our water. Oh, question real quick, Brune. Excuse me, I'm sorry. Says, when is the best time to prune in Harris County? I'll go ahead and answer that question real quick. So basically, you want to prune in the late fall. I would normally prune mine here starting pretty quickly. Like I said, your blueberries grow on new growth wood. So if you prune too late in the year before blooming, you're going to cut all your blooms off. So late fall into early winter would be my time to talk about pruning. Did that answer that question? Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. So irrigation. So blueberries are sensitive to sodium and sodium bicarbonate. So if you do have a really salty water, like if you're having to draw from a well and you do have a lot of salt or sodium buildup, probably going to negatively affect those blueberries. The best option, and that most of our growers here use commercial-wise, they have a surface water, whether that be a pond or something in that nature. That water just seems to be preferred. They've done a lot of studies over that over the last couple of years, and the sodium bicarbonate in the well water and things like that does affect them. If you're only limited to usage of city water, then you'll just have to make do, unfortunately. But for best production, they need to be on surface water from a lake or a pond or something like that. So the question is, how much do we water blueberry plants? They need to be watered about 1.5 to 1 gallons a day. So that's pretty high compared to some plants, but and that's on newly established plants. And the longer they get established, the more water they're going to need, obviously, because of the fruit production. We talk about how to water blueberries. The best option is going to be on drip, and I've got some pictures of drip coming up here in just a second. If you do have an established plant, you need to be looking at probably 6 to 8 gallons an hour. And the question is, how much water for a 4-year-old plant in a 20-inch container? My other video that I had talked about watering in containers, and I'm not going to try to play that one. But normally what we talk about is doing a drip. So as long as you're getting, what my question, 4-year-old in a 20-inch container. If you water that enough that you're getting that root ball wet, basically you can get emitters. If you've played with the drip systems, you can get certain emitters that will put out anywhere from 1 to 2 gallons an hour. So figure out what type of emitter you've got, and then kind of go from there. And that's really what works the best. Let's see. All right, so there's a picture of drip. And if you'll notice, that's just the poly hose with a, and I believe that's he said a 1 gallon per hour emitter. So he's putting out about 1 gallon of water an hour on commercial plants. And probably the homeowner needs to be pretty close to that, give or take, depending on your soil. But if you'll notice, it also is targeted directly at that root zone. So that, number one, maximizes efficiency. And it also talks about, putting it water where it's needed, which is directly at the root system. So I think that's vitally important as well. And there's another picture of it showing just that small area of drip. Not a lot of waste on water when you do have a drip system like that. And again, you're wetting the surface and it's soaking in, so you're not watering the alleys or the aisles or a lot of that. So we do encourage you guys to put a drip. You can also use a soaker hose as well for homeowners and things like that. And that does really, really good working with the homeowner, is those soaker hoses if you don't have a drip system to put on your blueberries. All right, so now we're going to talk real quick, and I think we're getting closer to the end. Talk about container planting. A lot of us may not be able to plant in the ground, and if you're not, then a container planting is a great alternative. If you have soil conditions that don't permit you to plant, like I said, in ground, such as heavy clay or maybe rock, container planting is the way to go. Any type of large container can be utilized. I'll show you some pictures here in just a sec and go from there. But you just need to make sure that you have enough root space for your roots, and that's the main thing. You don't want too small of a container, so you do have to go pretty good sized on containers. The best option is anywhere from about 30 to a 50-gallon container. A lot of you guys have seen the little half whiskey barrels or maybe a half of a 55-gallon barrel. Those work great. You do have to use a lot of peat moss and pine bark in those containers. So it is critical if you are growing in a container that you do have a lot of irrigation, sufficient irrigation, because they do tend to dry out very quickly. All right, so here's a picture of some commercial containers, and these actually work really good for the homeowner as well. They're not the prettiest containers to use, but they do get the job done. If you'll look, and I don't think you can tell me, I'm got another picture in just a minute, but this is a container grown blueberry operation here that he has. So he is growing them in containers, and if you'll notice, the little does have irrigation on the ones on the right, so they are irrigated with a drip and a soaker type hose. But this is a great container to use for the homeowner. You know, easily access these blue 55-gallon drums, and they work really good for, you know, planting in a environment where you can't plant in the soil. All right. Did I not have a? Let's see. Go back. Thought I had a picture of the another blueberry container, but I don't. That was in my video, and I don't think my video is going to work, so I'm not even going to try it this time. So real quick, and this is probably the last section or so, talk about insects and pests on blueberries. Three main things. So insects, talk about the blueberry maggot. Fungal issues, we're going to talk about mummyberry, boitress rot, and then what we call ripe rot. And then the last one would be pests, would be birds. So we'll go through these really quick, and then we'll probably have some questions. So insects, the blueberry maggot is probably the one that I think needs the most control. Homeowner and also commercial productions, they can be controlled with some of the neonicotinoids. If you're trying to be organic, spinosad or spinosad-based products can be good as well. That works really good. When you are controlling for insects, timing is critical because you want to get them before they basically burrow into your fruit. After that, then it's a lot harder to control them. Fungal issues have been a really big issue this year, especially with all the rain that we've gotten. Homeowners especially, we're looking at a lot of fungal issues, not just blueberries, but overall. Best thing for that is good sanitation. You know, keep your area clean, rake up any, you know, destroyed leaves or limbs, and that helps as well. You can also do a fungicide. One that I know I've used before is called Serenade, and that's a biofungicide that has some beneficial bacterium, and that's been really good at working on doing those applications of fungal issues. If you have a lot of rainfall like we've had, you're definitely probably going to have some fungal issues, so just be aware, and then you can treat with a good fungicide. But that Serenade, I've used that before, and that's a very good fungicide to use for some of these mummyberries. And basically, a mummyberry is just a berry that doesn't form, and it's a little bit premature, and it basically is just not a good viable fruit. And a lot of times it'll fall off and stay on the ground, and it basically will contain the fungal spores on it. So just sanitation and then a good spray program will help on those as well. The other one is what we call boitress rot. If we have a lot of wet weather, basically your blooms are not going to be very good quality blooms. And it's in the actual bloom itself. And so the blooms will tend to be a little bit more, I'm trying to think what the word is. They're just not going to be good quality blooms. And that's really if we have a lot of wet weather, and we have, you know, wet, rainy days, and here in East Texas we have for quite a bit. So again, a good fungicide will help take care of that as well. And then the last one is anthracnose, which we call ripe rot or anthracnose. But basically, it's lesions on the fruit. And you can also see it on the stems and leaves. Your leaves are going to be discolored, little spots on them. Sometimes you'll get some tip dieback. Usually you can prune that out if it's very minor. And again, you can treat it with a good fungicide. That one that we mentioned earlier, that Serenade is a good fungicide to use. But also, again, just good sanitation practices to help clean up the area and keep it in check. And the last one, birds. Probably talking to Mike here in our commercial production, his biggest issue was cedar waxwings. I know he cusses those things probably more often than not, but his best option, he's tried everything he's told me, but basically it's just keeping on them, staying busy, trying to keep them, the population down. He is in a rural area, so they do nest in the nearby trees, and they tend to go in there and just land on the fruit and basically knock off the fruit when they're mature. So basically, they just kind of go in there and maliciously knock off the fruit and have a lot of questions. Excuse me. They have a lot of fruit loss there at maturity. And he said you can control that by reducing the nesting. A homeowner can cover it with nets if possible. That's a lot of work sometimes. Or use scare tactics like the little inflatable blow-up scarecrows or the snakes. Those sometimes will help reduce the numbers. All right, that's all I had for blueberries on this little short program. I know I've got some questions, so Boone, do we have any questions?
Well, actually, David, Skip and I have been working overtime here, keeping
Y'all are awesome.
on track. There was a little confusion between the flow rate on the drip emitters versus the total volume of water on a daily basis.
Okay, so you're looking for an emitter. Most emitters will put out 1/2 to 1 gallon an hour on average. If you get the fancy ones, they're adjustable, but you're looking for about 6 to 8 gallons of water per day for a mature blueberry bush. So if you get an emitter that puts out a gallon an hour, you need to run it for about 6 to 8 hours to get that 8 gallons. Does that make sense?
Well, and that may have been the follow-up question, was
Sorry.
Deciphering the definition of young plant versus mature plant, going from
Yes.
1 gallon of water a day to up to 6 gallons for a mature.
Okay, gotcha. I probably didn't word that correctly. If you've got a brand new plant, you need about a gallon of water a day for however you want to figure it. So if you're a brand new plant that you're planting, that needs to be about 1 gallon of water a day, give or take. And that, of course, is depending on your soil conditions. If it's hot and dry, you may need to up that up a little bit. But if you get a blueberry plant that's, say, 7 or 10 years old, then you're going to want to have a pretty constant drip on it so that you're targeting that 7 to 8 gallons of water per day. And, normally, like I said, most emitters are 1/2 to a gallon an hour. So you're looking at probably 6 to 8 hours running it on a constant basis. So does that answer the question again?
It does.
Okay.
We did have one more
Sure.
question. Several people asked for sources for blueberry plants. Both Stephen and I noted to contact you at your office.
Yes.
That you might have a list of nurseries that sell a variety of plants.
Okay, I do. Absolutely. If they want to contact me directly, my email should be up, or they can call me. I'd love to sit and visit with you guys. So I went to one of my commercial producers here, and he will actually sell to the public as well. But I would be happy to give you that information. But any of your locally grown blueberries, hopefully they're going to be grown in this area. But check out your big box stores. They're usually pretty decent. I always encourage folks to visit your local nurseries as well. But if I can definitely get you guys a list or a source of some good blueberries if you're interested. So just let me know and we can do for that.
David, I keep having a hand raised here by Linda Arsenault.
Mm-hmm.
Linda, do you have a specific question?
Yes, my question is regarding self-watering containers like the e-buckets or even converting a 55-gallon tub. Would that work with the reservoir in the bottom so that the plant could take up the water as it needs to?
Okay. I think I'm familiar with that type of product. So basically, it has a reservoir of water at the bottom, and
Yes,
it takes it up from the bottom, correct?
yes, yes.
I've not used those, so I'm not 100% sure on how effective they would be with a blueberry.
I've converted many before, and I use them in my home garden. I have okra trees in them right now, and they
Okay.
show off tremendously.
Okay.
My question regarding the watering from the top versus from the bottom, I think it would still work. And the medium, the planting medium, is exactly what I use, the pine bark fines and the peat.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's very, very loose soil that wicks up the water.
Okay.
And the plant actually controls the amount of water it takes.
Correct. Then
Uh-huh.
theoretically, it sounds like it should work. I'll
Okay.
be honest, I have not played with that or experimented with that. So
Okay.
I would
Okay.
not be, 100% sure, but the theory on it, yes, ma'am, does work. We just always in this area just irrigate from the top down. That's
Okay.
just what I grew up with, so
Okay.
to speak.
Thank
So,
you.
but it should
Thank-
work. Yes, ma'am.
Continuing on, just general questions on containers. I know, David, you showed some pictures of the containers there
Yes.
with at Mike Beard's nursery.
Yes.
Just the size of container, and talk about drainage.
There you
within
go.
those containers.
Yes, I probably did not mention that enough. Normal size of container is anywhere from 30 to a 55-gallon container. That gives you adequate root space. Drainage, again, is critical. What you're going to do on any type of container like that is to drill some holes around the base, about 4 to 6 holes, depending on the size. Obviously, you don't want holes so big that the water just drains out immediately, but if you're looking probably a half-inch hole, something like that, with a drill, you should be adequate. The bottom, probably 20% of that in a container will probably stay moist, or it needs to stay moist, kind of like a buffer zone. But most of your roots are going to be in the very top portion of that container. So that's why we normally just do the irrigation from the top, so that we're making sure that top layer stays irrigated and goes from there. But again, watering more frequently if you are in a drier environment or if it's hot and windy, and your containers, basically they're depending on you guys to water. So probably you need to be on a little bit more regimented watering schedule if you are in containers, just to ensure that you don't have any dry periods in between waterings. So consistency on watering, I think, is probably critical in containers. You don't want them to go through hot and dry spells and then wet periods. So if you can kind of keep it even keeled on watering, especially in containers, I think that does your plant a lot better. Did that answer that question?
I believe so. Had a question on expectations of this is a tough one. Expectations of harvest yield per plant in containers at maturity.
Okay, so I guess the question is, how much fruit am I expecting out of a container grown plant? I know for the field, let's say in your in-ground container, a really top number is about 15 pounds of fruit per plant. So if you're harvesting anywhere from 10 to 13 pounds of fruit in a container, something like that, you're awesome doing that. But I would strive for about 10 pounds of fruit per plant per container for a season. So that doesn't sound like much, but it takes a lot of blueberries to make a pound. So I think that would be plenty for most homeowners. Did that answer that question?
It did. You know, that's relative. It could be up, you know, the maximum says here 15 pounds, but in a lot of cases, it's actually 0.
It can be 0 too on a bad year. So yes.
So anywhere in between that too.
Yes.
Two,
but
numbers.
average is about, a good average is going to be about 8 to 10 pounds per plant. And that's going to be, you know, again, depending on variety, weather conditions, watering conditions, and soil conditions. So there are a lot of factors that do play into that, but I think that 8 to 10 would be a good ballpark where you should be for containers.
Well, I believe that that concludes our questions here. Looks like we're pretty good. We had one last minute question that just popped in on no blooms this year. Talk about any offset production maybe next year.
Yes, so blueberries do bloom on new growth. So it could be that you had a lot of older growth that maybe is not as productive this year. If you'll go in there and prune accordingly here in the fall to kind of get some new growth rejuvenated, that might be a suggestion as well. But I'm assuming that it will. It should put on fruit year to year. You also may want to look at your fertilization. You don't want to starve it, so to speak. You may need to up your production if you're not putting out enough fertilizer to help the yields a little bit as well. So.
Very good. Looks like we're in good shape, David.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns?
Don't have any on this end.
Okay. As always, guys, thank you guys for participating. We appreciate it. So one more slide. It's next week's slide. There it is. So this week was blueberries, talking about blueberries. Next week is going to be Paul Winsky talking about beneficial insects in the landscape. That's always vitally important. We've got to have them for, you know, all types of pollination. So we'd ask that you guys, hope you enjoyed it. If you do have questions, please feel free to contact us. Let me go back. And there's my email and my phone number. So if you have a question, please feel free to call me or shoot me an email, and we can definitely get you pointed, guys, in the right direction. So thank you guys for listening, and hope it wasn't terribly burdening on you guys. So hope it was good.